Okay, my Christian name is Joe Hyslop. My my spirit name is White Eagle, given through to me by our ceremonies. I'm uh, I'm part of the Caribou clan, and I'm 67 years old now, and I've been I've been working all my life. Done certain things in my life, carpentry, mining, and then back in 1993, I got involved with our membership at the community level as a leader, and almost 30 years I've done that, and now within our Treaty 10 area, I'm the elder and I'm the advisor to the First Nation, to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. And then I'm on the Treaty 10 table, advising in Saskatchewan and Manitoba table. So I've done a lot of work in perspective to helping our people and moving forward, trying to anyway. And today, as I sit here and I think about what I've done, I've done very little in my lifetime. Life is so short. There's so much you can do in life, and I don't think I've done enough yet. And I hope the Great Spirit give me more time so I can at least try to make and see some changes in the way our lives are. So that my biography is it could be lengthy, but that's as far as I'll go with introducing myself. Well, Northlands is we're very unique. But Northlands is it's not that old. Northlands First Nation, the name itself, but the Dene people have been around a long time. Um, we were part. We were a Barren Land band. That First Nation. We had our treaties done in 1907. We were part of Barren Lands. And we, due to the Indian Act within our Treaty 10 territory, people were being brought in by Indian Affairs. And then around the late 60s and 70s, Barren Lands band and the community, they weren't seeing eye to eye then. So we split up from Barren Lands and we moved to Lac Brochy from Brochy. Well, we're still within our Treaty 10 area. We moved and we split up the band, and that's where Northlands comes in. Yes, we were part of Barren Lands. Barren Lands band is a Dene treaty, but we split up now. We did everything we had to do to, according to their law, to the white man's law, to do the split up. We had a vote and we split up the band. So Northlands today, when you look at it, we're way up in we're the furthest northwestern Manitoba, and we live on a land where no mining and any development has taken place. My people still living off the land day to day, and we're still in open country. It's not so bad, but being the only problem that I see today is my people within Treaty 10 in northern Manitoba is we're stuck on the reserve, and we have no economy and so forth. So it's tough for Northlands First Nations up there. So the significance of what we're talking about is in a time of changing, it seems as though the First Nations having more problems socially than anything else, especially this time of COVID as well. So time has a lot of effect on our people since the coming of the white man. So I will cover that in the next section. So so Northlands is very isolated. The only way you can get in is by plane, and then right now it's February, the end of February, and the winter road just opened up. So that's the only way of getting into our community. So I'll say as much for that for now. Well, life was from the elders' perspective, from the oral history of our people. People were very nomadic before the treaties. My people followed the caribou like the Plains Indians followed the buffalo for survival. My people followed the caribou from one coast to the next, and people shared, and people were looked after one another. People cared for one another. So people were very nomadic. They never stayed in one area long because they had to follow their livelihood for survival. And there was no sickness before contact with European. Before the treaties, before contact with the European, there was no sickness. People were very healthy. They lived long lives. They lived till they're very, very, very old before contact. But before the treaties, when the Europeans came and the fur market started, then that's part of how we survived and how we were part of the economy. We have always been part of the economy. We helped the newcomers in developing Canada. We had then people who were guides for Samuel Hearns that travel northern territory, and Watanabe was one of them, or he was our leader. He was a chief at that time, back in the 1700s. So our people were part of the economy since the Europeans came. And then people didn't have one. The whole territory to the 63rd parallel in the territories, none of what Northwest Territories, that was our homeland, our ancestral lands. That was our home. We didn't call one area home. That whole vast territory was home to the Dene people for survival, for medicine that we pick. And our people were practicing our ceremonies before the European, before and after the European came, before Canada was confederated. We practiced our traditional ceremonies and so forth. That was before 1876, before the Indian Act anyway. Now, then people, they were very powerful. We had then people, 4 corners of the earth. We still do. South, north, west, and east. We still have then people in those areas. Navajos, the hunting party that separated from a Dene group. Way back, long over 400 or 500 years ago, they spread up. Those are the Navajos that are down south, hunting party that never came back. But just recently, in about 20 years ago, 20 years now, I think we've connected again. And the communications there between the Dene that we've that I've went down south. So before the Europeans, people were happy. Yes, we had some hard times. We didn't depend on anyone. We didn't depend on government. We didn't depend on white people. We had shelters. We had what we needed to move forward, to keep going. Survival, the way of living life, according to our natural laws that were given to us by the Great Spirit. Everything was respected. If you were to cut down a tree for a purpose, you had to pray for it. You had to ask for the purpose that you're doing that for. So these are the traditions that we had, everything that we had, because then the people believed that everything had a spirit. It had a spirit. And we had to ask that spirit the purpose why we were doing it. When we were doing our ceremonies, sweat lodges, and so forth, we had to ask the spirit of the rocks and the fire and what we're doing this for. That was how we took care of ourselves, our medicine people. We didn't have no doctors at that time. But our woman delivered children into this world without doctors. And there was no charge. The only thing that it was done was with kindness, surviving another human being to survive, come into this world, another spirit to come into this world. That's how Dene people lived prior to the treaties, prior to the white men coming. They were adapt to how animals lived. They knew. They somehow communicated. They knew how things were going to be the next day, or how it is, or when there is an enemy or something close by, just by watching the birds, watching the animals, how they acted. Today we don't know if there's anything close by that will hurt us, because we've lost all that. We've lost all that because we don't practice it anymore. That was an everyday thing that we did. Our ancestors did way back then. So, because we had very powerful medicine people too, very powerful medicine people in our lives that we depended on for survival in those days, for guidance. Our elders for guidance, because they were the decision makers before the Europeans came, before we adapted to their way of life. That's what it was like for the Dene people then. The understanding that they had time with the treaties. But before I go into that, when they started negotiating the treaties, they opened. Our ceremony is always done with a drum. Our drum. We did have a pipe. I heard at one time, and they found one. They found one. It's a small pipe, but I've never seen it being used at the Dene ceremonies. But the drum has always been part of our ceremony. And our ceremony was done by drum. And the treaties were done outside, witnessed by the Great Spirit, by a big rock. This is from the elders' perspective. After that was done, the elders gathered and they discussed it for hours. what the treaties, how they can go about, whether they accept the treaty or they don't. And it took hours. Not everybody agreed. Our chief, Petit Kashmir, wasn't happy with what was on the table at that time. This is from what the oral history of our people. And our elders always said, the time of the treaty, it wasn't Chief Kashmir that accepted the treaty. The government at that time, the commissioner held a meeting and they selected an individual. His last name was Rummy. He's the one that agreed to the treaty because he was pushed into it. But then on the signature, Petit Kashmir's signature is there beside the X. That's the oral history of what Treaty 10 is, Barren Land Ban at that time. And during that ceremony, elders believed that they would be in partnership with the crown. As long as the sun shines, rivers flow, and the grass grows. That's their perspective, that they will be in partnership with the crown. Time of the treaty. And from the elders' perspective, today, at time of treaty and today, that message has been carried from that day to here. We never ceded our lands. We never ceded our sovereignty. We never ceded anything that has to do with our inherent rights, our sovereignty, and so forth. That was never given up. The elders believe at the time of the treaty, there's perspective on that. On this is very important. At the time of the treaty, lands and resources were never ceded. They agreed. They say they agreed to their law. One law is to live in harmony and peace and share with the newcomers. They did not agree on any other laws that has been imposed upon them today. They agreed on one law. They agreed to the British Crown at that time is to not to have wars with the newcomers and so forth. That they agreed upon. That's coming from the elders' perspective. That's the oral history of our people from Northlands Denesuline people at the time of the treaty. And at the time of the treaty, they put money down. They put money on the table. There was $50, there was $100, and then there was $5, and there was $2. So they had a choice on what they're going to pick. But the value of money in those days, people didn't know the value of money then. So that $5 was beautiful, nice and blue color, bird on it, and so forth at that time. So they selected that $5 because it was nice. So, and today our elders still believe that $5 was only a gift. They didn't sell their land for $5. It was a gift by the government, by the crown. And that the gift is to carry on every year. On elders' perspective on health, education, and our treaties, economic development, on health, there's a clause in Treaty 10 that promised, as long as the sun shines, grass grows, river flows, we will look after your health. We don't have it says in the treaties we don't have enough doctors to have your own doctor, but we will look after you. So, and the medication that goes with it and so forth. But today you see our people, from elders' perspective, some of them say, how come we're paying for some of these medicines that the treaty does non-insured health benefits cover? At the time of the treaties, they said non-insured health benefits was not the issue. That was never discussed. There was no negotiations at that time. So when an economic bomb, we were to share the land, share the resources, if they were to extract, but they had to consult with the First Nation based on when you look at the Royal Proclamation. The people of that land have to say, okay, before you even go start digging and exploring in those areas. That's from the elders' perspective. Their lands, that they were free to roam anywhere in Turtle Island for their survival. We will not interfere with your mode of life. And that's how they understood it. That's not the written part of our treaties. Our written part is very limited, and some of it is not true. The time of the treaty. When you ask an elder, what do you think about the treaties? You think it's good? You know they'll tell you that the other party has benefited more than us in our treaties. That's the time of the treaty, what happened, what they believed in, and what they carried the message to their younger generation. It's carried on orally from one generation to the next till now. And I carry that message the way the elders have spoken to me. And the way my father has taught me. But my father was a leader for many, many years. 27 years he was chief of Barrenland Band, where we moved from. And he had a lot of guidance from our elders. And he always told me when he talked to me, when he taught me was, these are not my words, my boy. These are the wise words of our elders that were given to me to share with you. Now it's up to you to share and carry the message. That's how our elders look at the treaties and how it was. They were the ones that sat out on the land just a few feet away, maybe 120 feet or 200 feet from where the treaties, where the government's tent was on the outside, a little shelter that was put there so they can be under that. But they sat outside and they discussed the treaties because elders' role was very important those days. In the 70s, they were still very important. They were still the guide. They still made the decisions in our community. But today, our elders is not being looked at the community level. All that is lost. Our language was spoken by our elders and the membership then, who were to be membership before the signing of the treaty. There was discussions in our language, yes. But during the negotiations with the Crown, if there was any, they say. Because treaties, they say, is a cooked meal, where everything is done and you agree to everything they say. If it's all written already, the commissioner had everything done. During the discussion, when it was being discussed with the Crown, which is the commissioner representing the Crown, it was done in our languages, but the interpreter, the priest that was there, the witness to our treaties, didn't speak Dene fluently. But there were no Dene people speaking English at that time. Foreign language was something new to them. They didn't speak of them. Our education never got into our territory till late 60s and the 60s. So at that time, the priest negotiated. But you know, that priest, coming from our elders, that priest that negotiated on our interpreted, came from Europe, France. 1 year before the treaty was taken, was signed off in 1907 by the Dene people. When he came to Canada, he went to Alacross Station, where he stayed for a year. That's where he learned Dene, 1 year. And Dene language is a very hard language to learn in 1 year. So imagine what the interpretation was at that time of the treaties. 1 year. So he didn't understand fully. The Dene people couldn't speak it fully, but still interpreted on behalf of our Dene, because our Dene people didn't speak English. So that's how it was. There's no lie. But today, if you're going to have a treaty, both nations have to really understand each other, understand what it is that's on the table before any treaty is done. So it wasn't a fair deal because of a language barrier between the Dene and the commissioner. Now, I'll just give you an example. But it's like today. We have all these First Nations right across Canada doing land claims. Some of them are working 30 years to settle that land claims. And it took a couple of hours to sign off those treaties. So you think that's a fair deal? I don't think so. There was no negotiation. Comparing to what you see, it was a cooked meal. That's from our elders' perspective too. The cooked meal, done. Take it or leave it. So the language barrier was not the best at the time of our treaty. I've been asked questions about our ceremony. Our people at the time of the ceremonies used drums only. I only mentioned drums at the time of the ceremonies that were done, because of that Indian Act, 1876, on what the House passed. Our people, even our priests, said it was not a good thing to do. Evil, you guys practicing these ways. Our ceremonies that we did. Already the Indian Act was in place, time of the treaties. So our ceremonies that our ancestors used to do were not used at that time because of the Indian Act, the laws they implemented. They would go to jail if they practiced those things. And already my people were converted into Christianity, Catholic way already. Even them thinking it's not a good way, evil. Because of the Indian Act and because of the priests of the black robes that came to us. So our ceremonies were being lost already, we were being fined, we were being incarcerated for practicing our ceremonies. So most of our ceremonies were never done at those gatherings because of the restrictions of the Indian Act. But that Treaty 1, Treaty 2 was done in 1700 and so forth. They were still able to practice their ceremonies. That's why they used these pipes and so forth at ceremonies. But the Dene people didn't have that privilege, 1907. Well, today, what can be said about the treaties now? You know, our treaties are not dead. They're there. It's just that we have to keep reminding. We have to keep reminding the Crown, have to keep reminding and educate our people on our treaties, why it's so important that we keep it alive. You know, the partnership that we have can improve if the government willing, the Crown is willing, and it can improve our lives. It can improve on how we communicate with government to work side by side based on the treaty promises and our inherent rights. It can improve. But we must always remember the importance of that partnership, the importance of the agreement that we have with the Crown. And we have to keep reminding them. But some of these people that are in Ottawa sitting there representing the Queen don't know what treaties are. You don't understand what treaties are. You know, it's sad that I have to sit here today and still cry out to our people and our leaders to push our agenda under our treaties. All the elements that we believe our elders talked about since the beginning of our treaty. It's so important. Forget the contribution of agreements. Concentrate on our treaties. Concentrate on our own governments. How we can do it. That would be my advice at all times. Maybe someday, maybe these treaties will weather out. It seems that way if we don't push it. It seems like our treaty number today is just a number. We have to push the Indian Act aside, get rid of most of it. Some of it's beneficial, some of it's not. Develop our own based on our treaties, based on our inherent rights, and moving forward. Then I think we'll get somewhere that way. But we can't stay status quo as it is now. Now we're accepting everything the government throws at us. We're staying status quo, which is not right. We have Indian Act elections. That's not our way. Minister has all the control. Our leaders have no control. They're controlled by the minister to push these contribution agreements and look after their funding. That's not the role of our leaders. Our leaders are there to push our agenda and protect our treaties, our inherent rights, protect our interests in moving forward. That's what I think today. And not that some of all these answers and everything that I tell you, most of it comes from our elders that are passed on, what they believed. So we really have to educate both the Canadian public and the government, and our people, most of all our people. So they cannot be, so they won't have to be Indian Act chiefs representing government. No, we have to do it our own. We don't want that. We can't always ask for permission, even how we're going to select our leaders. When we do customary election, customary laws, when the customary election for our elections, we should not ask for permission. That we should be the one deciding, not a mine minister telling us it's okay, I agree with it. Not up to him to agree. Before the treaties, we never had the minister. We had our way of doing things. And we never gave that up. I'm only trying to educate people who are going to look at this video. Trying to give advice on how to move forward in the future. And how we can revive as Dene people with our culture, our traditions, our medicines, our ceremonies. We have a lot of work to do. My relatives, my children, we have a lot of work to do. When you look at partnership to the Crown and the First Nation, the partnership is not there. We should be at the table at an equal level. We're not the fourth order government. I'm an elder now. It's my perspective as an elder. We're not the fourth order of government. We're the first order of government, should be equal setting with the Crown to making decisions within our lands and our territories. Our ancestral lands, that's the term I like to use. They developed 1876, the Indian Act. After the treaties, without the consent, the first order of government in Canada. Without consent. And that's where the residential schools come in. They tried to assimilate the people that they had treaty with. Assimilate them into their way of life. To lose their languages, their culture, their tradition, their medicines, their way of life, their ceremonies. That's not what treaty is about. But they've done it. And they've almost succeeded in doing it. And now, today, our people should be benefiting for the education purpose, health purposes. The treaty promises that were given to us. Just that, not our inherent right, but the treaty promises that were given to us. An agreement between the Crown and ourselves. But it's not being done. Nothing whatsoever. Do anything with a stroke of a pen yet. We can't do this because of our Constitution. Where's ours? So many things has happened since the treaties. 1982, when you look at it, when developed the Constitution, Canada. We weren't even looked at. So the chiefs had to scream, and they were admitted into Parliament. And that's when they come up with Section 35 of the Constitution. Even that is very limited. That's unfinished business, Section 35. They were supposed to go back to the table on Section 35. Because in their eyes, in the Crown's eyes, Section 35 is very limited. Only 4 areas that's covered in Section 35. Nothing is mentioned about sharing the wealth of this country. That's after the treaties. What we're going through now. We're stuck on one reserve in the community, one reservation. Once we step out of there, we lose our rights, our treaty rights anyway. But our inherited rights should always be there in the Constitution, because we are a nation of people. That's how it's like today. And now today the government says we're going to have nation-to-nation tables. We're going to have nation-to-nation tables to discuss that. Revive your government. Your nationhood. It's not up to the government. We had it before the treaties. We had it after the treaties. We still have it today. So that table that they're talking about, at the end of the day, it's going to be a treaty again. Modern treaty. Will it be under their policy, under their guidelines, their regulations, their laws? We have to develop our own laws within our territory for governing ourselves. Our own laws at the community level. At that table, if they agree to that, then that's fine. But I haven't seen that yet. So we got the short end of the stick in the treaties. People are always saying, you people get free, everything free. We don't get nothing free. We sacrificed for it. We sacrifice a lot. Our ancestors sacrificed a lot for them to benefit. And us, we live in paper homes, houses that last 15 years. That wasn't part of the treaty. So that's coming from my perspective as an elder. I have expressed about other elders that gave me messages. But this perspective of what it's like today now are treaties. Treaties is not about contribution agreement dollars. Treaties are a sacred document where I can sit across from the crown and negotiate what's needed for our people, what's rightly ours, what should have been ours. That's what treaties are. It's a sacred document. It's a covenant. It's not a contract. It's a covenant between the crown and ourselves. The promises that were made to us has never been fulfilled. I don't know if it will ever be fulfilled. But it's up to us elders now to carry the message to our leaders. hoping that they do something for us. That's my perspective on treaties. It's so important that everything that was discussed with the Crown, representatives of the Crown, discuss it based on treaties and our inherent rights, not based on their policy and their legislations or the funding regulations. That has nothing to do with treaties. All the monies that we get comes from the national envelope of Canada that everybody enjoys, not just people on reserves. That's my perspective on what it's like on treaties today. As elders, we are responsible. I am responsible as an elder and any other elder that responsible to carry the message from our ancestors that signed out the treaties. We're responsible to make sure our leaders follow the promises and how our elders understood those treaties to protect the interests of our people under those treaties. We are responsible to give guidance to our younger generations to carry the message. We are responsible as elders, those who know how to do ceremonies, to keep those ceremonies going, to keep those songs going, to keep those stories going. Because our history as Dene people is not documented. It's all oral. Our laws as Dene people is not documented. It's all oral. We all know those laws. The Creator's law, the natural law that was given to us as Dene people to live by. As elders, it's up to us to keep it going, so it doesn't shun out now. Our younger people are starting to practice these ceremonies. Let's not say they're evil, because that was our way of life. That's how we spoke to our Great Spirit. That's how we asked for guidance, direction through these ceremonies. And that's that was our survival before Europeans came. After Europeans came till 1876. That's when we start losing everything, but it's coming back. So my advice to everyone that's listening, that's going to be looking at this YouTube, is practice and carry the message of our people.